Welcome to the Ingredients for Success podcast. I'm your host, Jackie Rizzo, and today's guest is Ivan Wasserman. Ivan is the managing partner of the leading regulatory, intellectual property, and litigation law firm, Amin Talati Wasserman. The firm is dedicated to the food, dietary supplement, and cosmetic industries and helps companies of all sizes develop products and create and execute marketing campaigns that are both legally compliant and effective. Ivan and his team represent clients in matters involving the FDA, the FTC, state attorneys general, class action litigation, trademarks and patents, and ingredient safety issues, including GRAS, NDI, and Prop 65 analysis. Ivan is also counsel to the International Probiotics Association and has been included in Best Lawyers in America from 2007 to 2022. Ivan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Jackie, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, I'm excited to have you. This is such a pleasure. As we begin, please share a little bit of your backstory. What was your aha moment that led you to representing companies in the better for you industry?
Yeah, no, it's sometimes I think about it. If I think back to law school in the early 90s, if I thought one day I'd be reviewing dietary supplement labels and advertisements, are you crazy? What's a dietary supplement? So yeah, no, I mean, like a lot of career stories, there's some planning, but mostly is luck and being in the right place at the right time. Yeah, I did go to law school in Washington, D.C. And, outside of Washington, D.C., when you think of lawyers, you primarily think of people fighting it out in court, right? Or doing some big corporate deals like on LA law or something like that, or doing family law or real estate law. But being in Washington, I was sort of introduced to the world of federal regulations. Obviously, it's all based here. And right out of law school, I actually worked for a healthcare law boutique, which I was doing Medicare work. So every year, every hospital sort of has a little fight with the federal government on whether or not they're owed money under Medicare or whether they should pay money back because they were paid too much. And that is a legal process that is just about as creative and exciting as it sounds. You're sort of just counting numbers. So I knew, you know me a little bit, Jackie, that I've got a sort of creative side, and I think maybe we'll be talking a little bit more about that later in the podcast. But I knew that wasn't for me. And then one day I literally just saw an ad in the local, back then it was still print in the Legal Times, it wasn't online, for an advertising regulatory lawyer. And I said, what is that? So I answered the ad and I met with the woman who was running this small firm at the time, who had been former in-house counsel at the FTC. And she said, yeah, we get to, read food labels. We get to read cosmetic labels. We get to tell Estee Lauder to say things differently than their copywriters were saying. And I said, are you kidding? Lawyers get paid to do that. And the rest, as they say, is history. And then, as I've been doing this for 25 years, it's just been such a wonderful thing meeting so many exciting people, so many creative, people driven to really make it a better world and make the food and supplement industries just another great way to keep people healthy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know our industry is very lucky to have you, for sure, fight for us and to help us stay in track and online. So you said you've been practicing law for the past 25 years. When it comes to class actions against dietary supplement companies, do you think in the last few years there's actually been a rise in cases? And if so, why do you think that is?
Yeah, there's absolutely been, well, I should say that there's a tremendous rise in cases over the last, let's say, 15 years. Okay. So maybe 15, 20 years ago, it was rare to see a consumer class action based on, something that a food or a dietary supplement or a cosmetic company said on a product label. That was just rare. Class actions were mainly, people got injured by some type of product that they sold or securities, stock fraud, stuff like that. And then going back about 15, I lose track of time, years ago, someone in California realized that, hey, we can bring lawsuits against companies for quote unquote tricking people into buying their products. So the way a class action works, just real briefly, is, if you, Jackie, bought a product because it said natural and you didn't, turns out it wasn't natural, what's your damages? Really, your only damages is getting your money back, right? So $3 for the bottle of pasta sauce or whatever you paid. But if it's a class action, you multiply one Jackie times tens of thousands of Jackies in the state of California, whatever state you're bringing the case in. And as you can see, those $3 add up quickly, and therefore it's a financial incentive for the plaintiff's lawyers to bring those cases. And speaking of natural, going back 15, 20 years ago, the first big cases were brought against companies saying that their products were natural food products, not supplement products, primarily based on the inclusion of high fructose corn syrup in the products, in the pasta sauce or the iced tea. And the companies thought, well, yeah, it's corn syrup, it comes from corn. And the plaintiff's lawyer said, well, it's so different than the way the ear of corn popped out of the ground. The thing's been chemically altered and all sorts of altered. So that high fructose corn syrup is no longer natural, even though the product's natural. So give everyone their money back. And once those cases sort of made headlines, that sort of opened the floodgate, if you will, against lawyers realizing that this is a way that they can make money. And since then, the number of cases have increased exponentially. To get back to your specific question, in the last 5-6 years or so, there's a difference. There's a difference between sort of filed cases and demand letters. So we haven't seen a rapid increase in cases that have actually been filed in court, and we track them closely. So that number has remained pretty consistent over the last 4 or 5 years of actual cases that are actually filed in court, and it ends up being a battle in court. But what we have seen in the last 5-10 years is just a tremendous increase in the number of demand letters. And what a demand letter is the lawyer sends the company a letter saying, we think what you're doing is wrong on your label. We're going to sue you unless you settle before we sue you. In other words, unless you pay us. And our little law firm, as a barometer of that, we're a very fairly small law firm, but we have a large client base in the food and supplement industry. And we've every month, year after year, just seen an increase in the number of those types of letters that our clients are getting and we're having to deal with. And the reason is, I think they're getting more creative as fewer and fewer companies are using the word natural, and there's less and less low-hanging fruit on the labels. They're looking more for creative ways to go after dietary supplement and other companies to try and get some money.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yeah, I feel like even just talking with CRN is that we want more education on the labels. Do you find that is going to be a problem later with companies, with lawyers and class action, and just trying to think through this out loud, but pressing on more education for the consumer, doesn't that put more pressure on the companies with what they can actually put on their labels?
It's a balance that's very important to think about. There's the old saying, less is more, and in some instances that may be appropriate, but I'm generally of the opinion that more is more on labels if you're using terms that aren't sort of universally understood, right? So if you use the word natural, what you think is natural, what I think is natural, what my wife thinks is natural is 3 different things. I'm big in the probiotic industry, as you mentioned. There's something called postbiotics out there that people want to claim, which is generally deactivated microorganisms. So it used to be a live little bacteria. Now it's been deactivated or killed, I suppose, by heat or something. And it still has medicinal, it still has therapeutic benefits, but they want to call it a postbiotic. I asked my daughter, hey, what do you think a postbiotic is? And she said, well, that must be something you take after you take an antibiotic. And I thought to myself, that makes sense, right? Because that's biotic is what they think of, because not everyone's as deep in this industry like you and I are. So when you use terms that aren't universally understood on your label, like postbiotic perhaps, like natural, like maybe even clean and other words that people are using, to reduce your risk of a class action, on the cynical side, or on the non-cynical side, to make sure consumers understand, explain what you mean by that. By those words, you can put stuff on your website, and you can direct people to your website to keep your label cleaner. But the more you can put right there at the point of purchase, I think the better off you are to make sure consumers know what they're buying.
That's true. Thank you. In your many years practicing law, what is the most ridiculous claim you've come across?
Oh, Jackie, how long have you got? I was thinking about this, and I've seen a lot in my years, and coming up with the most ridiculous is hard. It's like, what's your favorite? Who's your favorite kid? And what that was the most ingenious, and I'll stay away from this. I do things general health and wellness products, not just supplements. But probably the most ingenious fraudulent product I'd ever seen to this day. I don't know if you remember these. Do you remember the Kanoki foot pads?
No, I don't.
There's an infomercial for them that were really big. They basically were this pad, picture almost a maxi pad, if you will. You put it on the bottom of your foot, and they claimed to draw out toxins from through your feet. And these things sold and sold and sold like you wouldn't believe. And the amazing visual that they had on television was that you put on a sort of picture, a very clean white foot pad on your bottom of your foot. And then, the graphics would show it drawing stuff out of your foot, and you'd pull off the foot pad and it would be this black, this dark, black, gross foot pad. So the visual was amazing. And so the consumers bought and bought and bought these things. Anyway, the Federal Trade Commission went after those things, and there was zero scientific evidence that they were drawing out any toxins. And basically, from the perspiration, the moisture in your foot, it got whatever was in there was wet and turned it black. So that was sort of the thing. And then I want to just mention, I just thought of this one, the most evil marketer I've ever come across. Early on in my career, I actually had a mail fraud. So you mentioned FTC, FDA, but actually the Postal Service can go after you for mail fraud if you're using the mail service for defrauding customers. And one of the earliest cases I worked, I shouldn't say that, but the case I worked on involved mail fraud against a guy selling magic rocks. And so the newspaper ads said, these rocks were blessed by some virgin in Europe, and, testimonials galore of, I got this rock and I won the lottery, or I got this rock and my fortune's changed. Anyway, you sent this guy $4 or whatever it was, and in theory, he was going to send you a rock. And they got in trouble, Jackie, are you sitting down? Not because of false claims, not because if you got this rock, you weren't actually going to win the lottery. They got in trouble because they weren't sending people a rock. They were just taking their money and literally not sending the dang rock. Just pure fraud.
Kind of like, this is silly, but like Jack and the Beanstalk, because all I could think about is these magic beans, these magic rocks. And can you believe people actually fall for that?
People fall for it. And, the supplement industry, there are some cowboys out there, but generally, I think overall, we try to have some basis for our claims.
Yes. So when companies are making claims, what should they always keep at the forefront of their mind before sending it out to the public?
Yeah. So, it's for the dietary supplement crowd out there, the two things to think of is one, your claims for a dietary supplement can't claim to treat, cure, or prevent a disease. Boom, that's rule number one. And what is a disease is not as sort of obvious or the way you and I might, or lay people might understand it. So, for example, general pain is considered a disease by FDA. So that's rule number one. And rule number two, which is as important, is to make sure you have adequate science to support your claims. If you're buying from ingredient companies, like the host of our podcast that does great science, make sure you review the science, make sure that The science is good. Sometimes, you're just looking for a bargain on ingredients, but, not all ingredients are the same, and not all companies have the same level of scientific support for their claims. So, make sure, and don't just take companies' words for it, and don't just rely on marketing materials. I can't tell you how many times, a product company, a startup company says, well, I met with the sales rep from this company, and here's this brochure they gave me, said I could make these claims. And the brochure will have all sorts of nice pictures and graphs, and it'll be a graph with sort of an arrow, slowly pointing up with, no numbers on the bottom of the graph or the side of the graph to have any idea what that arrow means. So really, make sure to do your homework in order to stay out of trouble.
Yeah, that leads me into actually my next question. I feel like you may have already answered it, but just in case you have others to add to it, what are the top 3 tips you'd give to a new dietary supplement company who comes to you for advice?
I think they got to realize, I'm talking to a lot of marketers, we're in this great turnover, whatever they call it, turnover these days, this post-COVID thing. And I'm getting more and more clients just saying, hey, our marketing department is 90% new people in the last 2 months because we've had so much turnover. And a lot of these people are just brand new to the dietary supplement industry. They weren't selling anything before, or they were selling, car parts or something to that effect. And I think, the most important thing is to know that these aren't car parts. It's not carpet cleaner. These are products that you are telling consumers to put in their mouth, to swallow, and to spend good money on, and perhaps, forego other types of therapies or things like that. So you really do have a responsibility, ethically and morally, to make sure your products are safe, effective, et cetera. And then legally, of course, where I come in, the regulations around these products are just so pervasive, so important and so much compared to just general consumer products, for the very reasons I just talked about. These things can hurt people, and these things are capable of fraud. So you have to understand that there's very specific rules. I don't know if this is a top 3, but just, number 1, make sure you know that any word on your product can get you in trouble. So make sure every word is carefully selected. I'd say, make sure you're going to someone who knows what they're doing if you don't, to review your stuff before it hits the airwaves. You're responsible for you're responsible for your claims, to have scientific evidence for your claims before, or at the same time, I should say, as they're released to the market. I get companies saying to me from time to time, hey, if I get in trouble, I'll run a clinical study. If someone asks me, I'll run a clinical study to prove my claims. It doesn't work that way. You've got to have it beforehand. So number 1 is do your homework. Number 2, make sure you've got good people advising you and helping you. And number 3, if you want to sleep safely every night, maybe think of another industry to get into.
That's true. Or have a really good regulatory department that you can definitely lean on to. I know that here at Stratum, our marketing department, we are, especially, David Hoover, the marketing manager, and Alexis Collins, and the director of product and brand strategy. So they're very creative, and definitely we always want to kind of push a little bit and kind of push regulatory just a little bit more so we can be creative and say some fun things. But we are very grateful that they keep us in check, and we still get to have fun, and we do it without being in FDA's radar or something like that, definitely get regulatory.
Yeah, you guys have an amazing reputation, and I can tell there's some brains behind those claims. They certainly know what they're doing, which is amazing. And I guess and as you said, that the fourth rule, I could make 20 rules, I'm sure, but this is one of the things that drives, I'm sure, your regulatory department and others crazy. Just because other people are saying it doesn't mean it's okay. That's the biggest thing to know. I can't tell you how many times a week, I'll say you can't say that, and then I'll get, the client will send, 8 companies on Amazon and, one company that no one's ever heard of saying what I just said you can't say. It's a wild, wild west. I'm sorry, it's a wild, wild internet out there with lots of smaller companies saying all sorts of different things. And the FDA can't go after everyone. But just like the old cop analogy, if the FDA goes after you, or if the cop goes after you for going 65 and a 55, the cop's never going to just say, okay, you're fine. Just if you say everyone else was going 70, right? You're still going to get the ticket. And the same thing is in the FDA, FTC world. You can say, hey, FDA, what do you mean? Look at all these other companies saying that. It doesn't matter. We don't know who their lawyers are. We don't know what kind of risks they're willing to take. And it's very gratifying. And you also don't know if they're being investigated, because the investigations are typically non-public until they're public, until they're done. So one of the most gratifying parts of my years is if I can send a warning letter to a company who, to my clients, when they said, look what this other company is saying, and I told them not to do
it. Yes, yeah, I bet. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for making that clear. I feel like as a marketer in this industry, it is good for me to hear and to be reminded of. And I'm sure our regulatory department are going to be like, thank you so much, Ivan, for saying that out loud.
I got their back.
Yeah, you do. You definitely do. So in closing, rumor has it that you are still the one and only probiotic comedian. And not only that, but that you'll be taking your act to the big stage at Supply Side West this year. Can you give our audience a bit of a teaser as to what we can all expect?
That is true. I like to say I'm an aspiring lawyer and a practicing probiotic comic. And I can safely say, I think that I still am the world's only probiotic comic, which is hard to believe, given the success I've had, that there haven't been more imitators in the burgeoning field of probiotic comedy. Yes, as you said, I've been doing now this stand-up probiotic comedy. It still makes me laugh every time I say it, because it's so ridiculous, but so fun, but so true. At Supply Side West for, I think, 4 or 5 years now. Primarily, it's been on the small stage at the Probiotic Resource Center. But this year, I'm grateful to Informa and I'm either grateful or terrified to the folks at Informa have moved me up to the show and actually put my show on the official Supply Side West program on the big stage. A teaser is, you can expect, I'm not going to give a joke, but you can expect even more, I think, of a sort of vaudeville style variety act with ventriloquism, with musical guests. I can give a plug. I know that, Mike Bush, right? Mike Bush is going to be on stage playing guitar. Andy Hockman from Roundtable is going to be singing. Heather Granado from Informa, that everyone knows and loves, has got an angelic voice, is once again going to be joining me on stage to do a musical number. And I think you'll expect some surprises, which will surprise me too, because I'm still working on it. But it's hopefully it'll be fun.
It sounds like it's going to be a great show. I was wondering if you were going to bring out your guitar, because I vaguely remember you doing a Hanukkah song, and then also you did a song in, I think it was 2020, where you kept repeating it with your guitar. You can't say "Here's COVID." You can't say "Here's COVID" over and over. So I was wondering if you were going to bring that out again.
I might. One of the secrets, if you followed my comedy thing, is I don't actually really play guitar. So that was more of it was just randomly strumming random stuff, so for effect. But yeah, it worked. You can't claim your supplement cures COVID. You can't even claim it if it's true. So I tried to hit that home. Now Mike Bush is an accomplished guitarist, so I'm gonna bring the pros in for that.
But, well, I can't wait.
Thanks.
Well,
Jackie.
Ivan, thank you so much for your time this morning and joining me on the show. You always bring humor, and you take big issues and you make them understandable and relatable for people like me. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Stratum, for this great podcast. I always enjoy listening to it, and looking forward to seeing everyone live one day at Supply Side. I hope. Come to the show.
That's right. Everyone should come to your show. All right. We'll see you soon. Bye, Ivan.
Bye. Thank you.